Commissioner Fidesco?
Here.
Commissioner Fleet?
Here.
And Chairman Richard?
Here.
We have a quorum.
If you would please all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. While I have you standing, I need to swear everybody in that will give any testimony. So I swear any testimony I give this evening shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Okay, I would ask that all electronic media be silenced, and anybody that's going to give testimony tonight, if you would sign in with your name, please. Okay, first order of business is approval of the minutes of the January 13th, 2010 meeting.
Second.
Okay, that's motion by Commissioner Thomas, seconded by Commissioner Anton. Question on the motion. A roll call, please.
Commissioner Pill?
Present.
Commissioner Anton?
Present.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Fidesco?
Yes.
Commissioner Fleet?
Present.
And Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
And Chairman Richard?
Present.
Favorite kind of oral.
Okay, did we have a?
We had enough.
We had a quorum, okay. Next item would be the approval of the minutes of the March 10th, 2010 meeting. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Fidesco, seconded by Commissioner Anton. Question on the motion, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Anton?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Fidesco?
Yes.
Commissioner Fleet?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Pill?
Present.
And Chairman Richard?
Pass. Okay, first item of business is planning and zoning item 10-009, George Walcott of Oak Brook Toyota and Serva regarding the property located at 700 Oakmont Lane for the following. Special use permit request to allow off-site storage of vehicle inventory in the OR Office Research District. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How is everybody? I either feel really special or nobody likes to go to a planning and zoning meeting. What is it? I am here for that very reason. We are currently in a lease with the Serva Corporation to use 200 spots on their parking lot. We understand that that building is not at full capacity, and through Economic Development Director, Mr. Kimball, we contacted Serva and asked them if we could lease some of their spaces to park cars over at their lot. And they were very gracious about it. And we're just looking for a special use permit and approval from you gentlemen and Shannon to use the lot. That's really what it comes down to.
All right. Seeing nobody in the audience, we'll close the public forum. Does staff care to add anything before we go to the commissioners?
Sure. The commission will most likely remember back in 2005, the petitioners came before you to request a special use permit to park in this exact same location. At that time, they had an agreement with the Serva property to lease 123 parking spaces. They did that in order to accommodate their parking deck expansion plan. That deck was subsequently completed. The cars were moved back to that lot, and as evidenced by their success, they need to have additional storage, and they leased some property at 301 East Ogden for a while. They're moving away from that spot in order to renew this agreement with Serva. So it's my understanding that they have 6-month renewal options, and it sounds like they're looking to request a special use for a period of 12 to 24 months. Nothing substantial has changed at that property, with the exception of the occupancy is less now. It's about a third occupied, and there's no need for any parking variance or anything at this time. Staff would just want to note in the special use itself that if occupancy requirements change and exceeded that, they would have to come back for a variance at that point, or else the special use would be void.
How do you see, if they were to go to full occupancy, that this notification would take place?
Well, they'd have to come back through a public hearing process. So if the needs of the tenants that were to lease the 66% of the building back up to full occupancy, if they necessitated more parking spaces than what's currently there, they would have to petition for a variance similar to what they did in 2005.
Does your lease call for cancellation if they do go to a full tenant occupancy?
Yes, I believe we have that in there, yes.
Okay, and then we would be notified if that were to happen?
Absolutely.
For the village board. Can we start with Commissioner Thomas, please?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Pill?
Mr. Walcott, I was wondering if perhaps you could recite the vehicle identification numbers on the 200 cars you're going to park
You're
there
a
for us.
funny guy. I love that guy, I swear.
I have no further questions and wish you luck.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Anton?
I'm totally against this.
Kidding.
Commissioner Van Buren?
Again, there's no sales from the storage area.
Absolutely not.
It's strictly,
Absolutely not. We take one car over there and bring one back to show to the customers.
no problem.
Commissioner Fidesco?
I just have one question relating to the security. Did you have any security issues the first time around?
No, we didn't. And we have the Westmont Police Department doing an extra drive-through there on their shifts, so. it's not an issue.
I'm hoping that this expansion or this need for the space is because your sales are up.
We had a
not
great
because of
month
the
last month.
other issues that have been going on with.
No, on that note, obviously, we had our recall issues, but sales-wise, we are right back to where we were before that recall even happened, so we're in good shape.
Okay, good. Wish you luck.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Fleet?
Yeah, no questions. Wish you luck.
Thank you.
And I also would like to add my wish for good luck to you. It's nice to see you, and I hope
Thank
you
you, sir.
sold a lot of automobiles.
Thank you.
There will be no test driving up and down the street by,
Oh, absolutely not.
okay, by
No.
prospective
Like I said,
buyers.
when that storage lot is strictly for that. When we have a customer who wants to look at a particular car that's there, we bring one to that lot and then bring that car back to our lot to do whatever business needs to be done.
Right, and the ordinance, there was a text amendment approved in 2005 in conjunction with the original special use request that allowed for automobiles to be parked in the OR district. Provided, again, that trucks aren't, or cars aren't loaded and unloaded on site. They have to be at your dealership and then driven
Absolutely.
over. Customers can't go to the server property to view cars, no repairs, et cetera.
Correct.
You anticipate parking these cars in the normal parking stalls? They're not going to be parked bumper to bumper, et cetera?
Oh, no, they're just in the normal stalls. And if you were to go by there, we have 4 rows of spots that they have allowed us to use, so. And they're parked, they're all backed in, looks very nice.
Okay.
And there's no issues with any of that.
All right, no further comments by anybody? Since we have a special use, we need a reading of the findings of fact. Shannon?
Request for a special use to allow off-site storage of automobile dealership vehicle inventory in the OR Office Research District. Criteria number 1, the proposed use at this location will not have any adverse effects above and beyond those inherently associated with such a special use, irrespective of its location within the zoning district. The proposed off-site storage of vehicles meets or exceeds the conditions established by Section 8.09B of the zoning ordinance. In 2005, Oakbrook Toyota utilized the Serva property for similar off-site storage of vehicle inventory without issue and without the creation of any adverse effects on the Serva property or surrounding properties. Oakbrook Toyota is now making a nearly identical special use request, and it is not expected that this off-site storage of vehicle inventory will create any adverse or unique effects at this location.
If you agree with this, please raise your hand. We are unanimous in agreement. The findings of fact for special use are hereby adopted. I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees, Planning and Zoning Item 10-009, a special use permit request to allow off-site storage of vehicle inventory in the OR Office Research District.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that sounded like Commissioner Anton with the motion and Commissioner Pill with the second. Question on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, staff had recommended something about putting in a condition of, on a special use permit, to request 12-month extensions?
That will be, if it's okay with this commission, written into the special use ordinance when it gets in front of the village board. The reason being that if they want to come back and renew this, that they can forego the public hearing process every time.
You don't deem it necessary we include that in our motion then?
I don't. It's up to the commission, but I don't think it's necessary.
Is it all right with the commission members then? Okay.
May I ask a
Oh,
question?
Commissioner Fidesco.
That's for a maximum of 2 years. Is that what that was the request?
Correct.
So in other words, after 1 year, you would come back, or is it,
I think the way it will be written is we'll allow it up to a maximum of 2 years unless their lease is sooner terminated. But also if at the end of 2 years, they want to enter into another 1-year extension or 2-year extension, they can do so without having to come back and go through the public hearing process again.
all right.
Any further questions? May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Fidesco?
Yes.
Commissioner Fleet?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Anton?
Yes.
And Chairman Richard?
Yes. All right, sir, you have
Thank you.
our recommendation, and Shannon can tell you when you'll go before the committee of the whole on a Thursday evening.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Good luck to you, sir. Next item on the agenda, Planning and Zoning 10-010, Village of Westmont regarding preliminary discussion of a mural ordinance in the B1 Limited Business District. Staff?
Thank you, Chairman Richard. Staff brings this before you this evening in a workshop forum to get some feedback for the commission's feelings. The reason that this was initiated as an agenda item was because the Nature's Best grocery store at 257 North Cass contacted us and inquired as to whether or not they would be permitted to paint a mural on one of the facade walls of the building. Our sign code is written such that any illustration that's painted on a building or other structure counts as a sign, and generally speaking, properties are allowed to have one sign per lot, and then there are also a table of requirements for total area. So given that, I had to inform the interested party that at this time, it wouldn't be permitted unless you somehow forwent some of the other signage or made some sort of request for variance. I did request that they prepare a rendering so that we could get a better idea of what they were looking at. They said it would probably be something produce related, but this raised a general question in our minds. Is this something we'd want to see in the downtown district? Is there any interest on the part of the commission and village board to try to encourage like a public art program, a mural program, and how could that come into being? So in your packets this evening, there are some general comments pertaining to programs in other communities. Some communities have put it in ordinance. We're still in the process of researching that, but those ordinances typically regulate things like size, placement, materials, maintenance, what can be painted on there. Does it have to do with history and heritage, or can there be any advertising message at all? And then what process should be in place for potentially reviewing and approving those. So I did include some images from a community in Florida called Lake Placid. They've got a mural society, and just to kind of give an idea of what I thought the Nature's Best store was kind of going for, I included that for your reference. But at this time, I'd just kind of like to open it up for general discussion.
Okay, why don't we start with Commissioner Fleet?
First of all, my feeling is agreeing that this should not be a sign. It should be a work of art and not advertising. Although in graphic form could portray a message about possible services or products or produce in this case, offered at a particular establishment that's at. I'm sort of inclined to look forward to seeing how this develops. I think it would add some unique flavor to our town as people drive through and stop and walk through the town. That's my comments.
Commissioner Fidesco?
Yeah, I've been to numerous towns that had murals on the walls, and they have all been related to art, you know, whether it was historical type depictions or some sort of, you know, just, I guess it was more art, nothing to do with advertising whatsoever. So I'd be inclined to agree with Commissioner Fleet that it needs to be art. And yeah, I don't think it would be against anything that would, you know, have fruits and vegetables in it, you know, as far as for nature's best, but it needs to be portrayed in an artistic manner. And the places that I've seen recently, very nice, you know, the murals, and it would be good in our downtown. Although I drove through town the other day looking for spots. I didn't find more than about a handful of spots that would be good for this. I mean, others might be able to be, you know, used, but there are only a handful of good ones. So.
Commissioner Van Buren?
I agree too that it should be more artistic than advertising, but to have fruits and vegetables on won't bother me either. It comes to mind that I don't know if you've been to the city or town of Morris. Morris has done a great job with murals, and a lot of it has to do with more or less the vintage or the historical significance of the town and what's happened there. But I think it would be a nice addition. My only concern, or maybe there are others too, but is that they fade and they kind of go away, and you know there's a certain amount of maintenance that has to be done. That's all I have.
Commissioner Anton?
I think if it's a mural of Wally or I, it should be passed no matter what. But no, I like to echo what these guys are saying. I think as long as it's not advertising, I think that's kind of cheesy. But some of the stuff's done really well, like Morris. And I like what they were saying here about coming before the Plan Commission and take it as a case-by-case situation, because something might be for, you know, a religious thing, or it could be, you know, it could be anything. It could be some. What if you got some, you know, graphic nudity or something? We can't let that happen. It's got to come before somebody to look at it, because, you know, we know about Greg Pill. I'm kidding. But no. So seriously, I like to keep a hold on it, and advertising definitely no. That's not very. I'd like to keep it artistic, like the rest of the guys said. I mean, that makes more sense. Thanks.
Commissioner Pill?
Thank you. Sort of looking at the original question, I think that this is as good a time as any. Perhaps this serves as a triggering point, and I think that we should have some type of ordinance in place. I would say that first before we actually define it, but I think that that's a very, very good idea, because if and when this were to occur, I don't know that it would be contagious, because I also drove around a little bit, and there's not that many walls that are suitable. There's obviously, if the two buildings are right up to each other, that eliminates those two walls from contention. But there are some, and there could be some redesign, and there could be some newer buildings and changes in what we know today, so we're looking ahead to the future. So I think an ordinance like this is, or text amendment, is something we should be looking at. Now, what should it contain? I certainly agree with Commissioner Fleet and Fidesco that I'd like to see something that's more classic in design. I like the historical nature and the period, the 1940s, for instance, that the facade grants are based on. I think that's a nice thing to link. I'm not so much a person who prefers to see something from a different era on each wall. I sort of like more of a unified, not necessarily matching and not necessarily done by the same person, but I think that something that has some uniformity or some cohesiveness or some strong statement that runs through all of the art is important. I agree with whichever commissioner has also brought up the fact that it shouldn't contain blatant advertising. I mean, let's face it, if Nature's Best chooses to have produce, that's advertising in a form. But that's the type of advertising I think we would be looking for, as opposed to having verbiage up there and things like that. So, you know, perhaps a cornucopia with fruits and vegetables coming out, or maybe an old push cart reminiscent of the 1940s. I can remember them going down alleys and selling the vegetables and things like that. That would be something that would be 1940s historical, and I think it would be a classic type of look to it. So, you know, as opposed to some types of tomato on steroids, which is what we're going to be getting in the next 3 years or so as they genetically engineer everything. Anyway, so I feel that an ordinance or a text amendment is something that we should be looking at seriously, and I favor that it match the era of the facade grant and also Westmont Historical Society, because I think those are the two important looks that the downtown should reflect. Thank you.
Commissioner Thomas?
Good luck to staff. I don't know that I want to limit them to a time period. I think it's obviously going to have to be a case-by-case basis, you know, and it can't be advertiser, or I hate the Planning and Zoning Commission, Anton. And so it has to be a common sense case-by-case basis, and but there has to be some kind of guidance that the staff has to come up with, and then we decide case by case. But I enjoy. I look forward to seeing what the different businesses would come up with, if anybody comes up. It might just be Nature's Best, and that's it. But who knows? It could be a flurry of them. It could, but has to be something in place. That's all I got.
I myself, I see an inherent danger in this. I hear the commissioners talking that you don't want it to be advertising. We want it to be art. Are we to be construed as an art committee? And who amongst us has credentials to be? I mean, we could be faced with the crucifix and a bottle of urine on the side of a building. This is art to some people.
True.
And to be quite honest with you, I don't think I would hate to have to judge what I consider art and what some artist is going to come up and say. And secondly, I think the upkeep of them, if it were to be allowed, could present a problem. Nothing is more beautiful than a brick building covered in brick and not paint, to be honest with you. Just but like I say, I see the inherent danger of if we were to deny somebody a permit and we've allowed this. Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
A question to the lawyer. What happens when somebody comes in and wants to do something on their own building? I don't know how far the freedom of speech goes, and what the town would like to have. And
Well, it's not a right that they have. It's something that the village has the absolute right to regulate. One, you're a home rule community. Two, this is a form of signage that, under your police powers, the village can regulate in any form it sees fit. The key with any regulations is to do it equally, applying a set of standards to everyone. If you have an amorphous standard as to what's acceptable and not, that's when you can open yourself up to some litigation. I think in a case like this, though, you can craft some standards. You hit on one theme that perhaps could be carried out, or there could be some other themes, but you identify what type of depictions are acceptable, and then you put other parameters around it. You talk about the upkeep, and you know, you exclude all words and phrases, all graphic depictions. Maybe you say it has to be tied into some historical aspect of Westmont or a certain time period. while allowing certain kind of pseudo advertising. Like if there's a running store, you could have I would think a well-done mural of a marathon might be tasteful, although it's not time specific or era specific, so that may knock it out of the box. But if you have criteria, you could go through it. Generally, you'd have some committee that would vet this, and you'd think work with an applicant, and then eventually it would come to you and the village board.
What would happen once a store were to vacate?
It's a good question. You know, you could require them to paint over it.
Or sandblast.
Sandblast.
When someone just does a bankruptcy and goes out of business.
Yeah, he's got
you
not
gotta-
enough
Who are you
money
gonna
to-
get money from?
Do a bond up front or
Yeah.
something. Bond up
You
front.
know,
Do a bond.
Hondo.
Let the taggers take.
I mean, one of the other concerns too, and the reason I brought up the era thing is that you could effectively see people, I think there was it was even brought up in here that someone could be looking for facade grant money to help subsidize the painting of a mural. Because depending on the orientation of the building, it could end up being orientated that way. So that's why I thought there should be some tie-in so that fronts match sides, match backs, and depending on which is your public side and things like that, so that there's some uniformity to the overall look.
Interesting.
would we leave the vetting of the ability of the artist up to the person that's gonna have the painting done?
Well, no, I think a depiction of what they're proposing would have to be provided to the village, and a committee would look at it and.
That would be an absolute minimum
Right.
as to what they were proposing.
Yeah, you'd want to see what they're doing, see if it meets the criteria. I guess it's a little premature to get into the conditions and such. As Shannon mentioned, you know, they're kind of starting to do some research, what else is in place that we can look at, so we're not reinventing.
I would assume that these towns, perhaps the Florida one, and I think there's been a request by you guys for copies of the ordinances.
Yes, and in fact, since writing the staff report, we heard back that that particular community discussed in a village board setting, putting an ordinance into place because of maintenance issues and things like that. They haven't as of this point, but there are some examples out there that we're trying to get our hands on so that we could bring those back to you if you decided.
Try
that it-
Morris, because they've
Okay.
done an extensive amount of work there with that. And
I also think that there has to be, somebody has done this in the United
Yeah.
States. There's
Yeah,
got to be some
There are.
ordinances.
I'll give you another.
I think you could
town.
write in enough things to
Steubenville, Ohio.
prohibit.
Which town?
Steubenville, Ohio. It's Dean Martin's hometown. And they have extensive number of murals throughout the downtown.
Okay.
But I think that you can certainly craft the ordinance or the language so that it has some safeguards in it. And then I don't see this as being something that there's going to be hundreds of these things. So it could be something that could require planning and zoning hearing and village board approval. That's putting enough eyes on it that it should be able to go through and satisfy the majority of people's tastes and things like that, so we don't end up with a situation like our chairman indicated before with the bucket and the cross.
Possibly inherited in the ordinance should be a language that if a mural were to be defaced, that it would have to be either eradicated or repaired immediately.
And just to bring this up too, this didn't come up in the staff report, but we already do have some provisions pertaining to graffiti and obscenities. So things that are painted that are generally considered in poor taste are already regulated by municipal code.
Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any further comments? Shannon, do you have a feel as to?
I just want to get a confirmation. My general sense is everyone prefers that there'd be some connection to the historical character of the community. Does that seem to be the case?
If it were to happen, I would prefer to see that, yes.
Okay.
That's okay too, on your side.
Okay, well, with the commission's permission, we would go back then and research this further and possibly bring back some draft language at a future meeting.
All right. Since we've discussed that to death, does any commission member have anything to